September. Go off the fly.
Right, so we have my faith in it.
Yeah.
It's got to
Actually, we do.
I'm just trying to.
That's why you did it.
Just trying to take you out. There you go. Well, one of us can reach it. It's not me.
So, we're not this one, so we're going to think.
We'll call this meeting to order at 6:01. This is a public meeting. Any declaration of special interest or general nature thereof, please signify if you have conflict of interest. Seeing none, we'll move on. Sorry, I've got too many in front of me here. The purpose of the meeting is to deal with three items, and I'm going to read something in regards to public meeting and how this meeting should go, and then we'll ask for the planner to move us forward in the agenda. So personal information collected here at this public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter and these matters. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments are collected and form part of the minutes which are available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning and Development. The purpose of the public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant or staff, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or for further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. When you speak, please provide your name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. All comments should be directed to the chair of the meeting, myself. The applicant will be provided the opportunity to address public questions once all members of the public have made their submissions. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Public meeting reports are provided to inform the public of all relevant information. Information gathered is then referred back to the planning staff for their consideration in their review of an application. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the application. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation to council regarding the application. Following a council decision notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or a public body would have ability to appeal the decision of council to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the township before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. So, seeing those comments have now been made, we'll move on with the agenda tonight. So please, Director of Planning, if you'd like to come forward.
Thank you. Through your, the first application is an application for 596 Lyndhurst Road. It's proposed to rezone the property to a site-specific rural zone to allow for a wedding venue to operate on the property. It would be in a tent, and there would also be rooms on the property and an accessory building that would be used for it. The venue itself would also include washrooms and parking associated with the use. There's been no public input to date provided to the department based on the notice that was provided, and notice was provided in accordance with the plan.
Any questions or concerns? Councilor Reid.
Yes, some of the things that came to mind is parking access. It says Neighbors Road. Is there an active right-of-way there? Is there a proper right-of-way? And the water side of this property, if it's changed, is there still access there or the potential of another cottage or dwelling being put there in the future?
So Director will ask the applicants to come forward and answer questions. Please, if you can come forward and state your name and you can answer the questions
Toudal Boucher, and my husband Mike. So I think there might have been a little confusion. We aren't using the neighbor's road, and for parking, we would be coming directly on our property and partially along our fence line up into the back of the property. So we wouldn't be using the neighbor's road in any way, and we aren't up against any water. Our property goes from, 596 Lyndhurst Road, I was supposed to say that before. So it goes from the highway, from the road, 596 Lyndhurst Road. It runs just short of 1,000 feet back, and our neighbors in the back probably are another 1,500 feet, so we aren't on to the water in any way. Also, for the rooms that are proposed, we are asking for a groom's cottage with a common wall to accommodate the washrooms right in behind. So there won't be any sleeping quarters. There would be room, a little cottage for the groom to get ready with his guys, and also in the main house above our garage, we have a large room that we have converted, would be used for a bridal suite. So there wouldn't be any overnights or anything like that. As far as the amount of parking, the gentleman, one of the building inspectors, Ken, was going to give me a link for size of parking stalls, but he hasn't yet. So I measured them out and roughly figured about 70-ish parking stalls, but then he told me I had measured them too big, and he was going to send me a link, so I don't have an exact. And I know my little drawing's not really good there, so don't judge me on that, please.
We have to start somewhere, right?
Right? Yeah.
Any further questions in regards to the drawing of the map that's up front? Councillor Maybe?
Yes, just a follow-up. Thank you, Your Worship. The grass and dirt laneway, as you have written here, is the access way to the property for the parking and all the
Correct.
people. The neighbor's road, how close is that to the edge of your property?
The closest it runs, so there's our fence line and the ditch and then his road, so probably about 7-8 feet. And the furthest it comes is probably about 40 or 50 feet. It comes from the road, out along the fence line, and then it bumps out through some trees and back along the fence line.
And just one more follow-up.
Yeah.
The neighbor's road, is there other properties back there or cottages that which are using that same access way to the water property?
So the two people that live behind us, their road is just for them. So our little laneway, dirt and grass laneway, is would simply be for us and for anybody coming onto the property.
Thank you very much, and good luck. Having done over 500 weddings myself as a photographer,
Oh.
it was a very nice venue.
Well, maybe I should get your card.
It was a past life, right?
Yeah.
If I can just make a couple comments, we've worked very hard. I don't know, am I allowed to do that here?
Sure.
We've worked very hard on cleaning the property up. It was kind of a hardcore space when we first got there, and I would like to do the venue to create work for myself and to create work and keep some money in the bubble of Lyndhurst. And I've met a lot of good vendors that would be, well, potential vendors if this all goes, when this all goes through. And yeah, I would like the opportunity to be part of the community in this way.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe?
Good evening, and through you, Your Worship. First of all, I'd like to wish you the best of luck in this endeavor.
Thank you.
And I just have one question. I see it says you'd like to put up a construction of a tent. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we have a 50 by 80 pole tent. So it would go up in the beginning of the season, which would be the last weekend of May, and it would be taken down roughly mid-October, depending on the weather. So it's called an air structure, I guess is what it's called, but yes, it's a pole tent with the 3 center poles. It's pretty big, and we've got it fully equipped with windowed sidewalls, and it's all approved for fire and safety.
And that would require a permit, I believe, from the township?
Correct, yes. So we would get, I believe, it's called a seasonal permit, or it would cover our season as opposed to applying for a permit for each, because we can't take it up and down, it's a pretty big job, so. Yes.
Thank you very much, and again, good luck.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll end the discussion, and we thank you very much for coming to council.
Thank you.
And we do wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I hope for this.
So the next item on the agenda, Director of Planning.
Through you, the next item on the agenda is a public meeting for property located at 981 Foster Bay Lane. This is a rezoning to zone property that was severed for the purpose of lot addition to be added to abutting properties at, as shown on the sketch, Gibbs.
Fine, getting there. Sorry.
So the purpose of the zoning amendment is the land that's being added to the lots is zoned rural, and the existing lots that are benefiting from the lot additions are zoned shoreline residential. So the purpose of the zoning amendment is to alleviate resulting split zoning on the benefiting properties. This has gone through consent approval and been provisionally approved by the county, so it's a technical amendment to make sure that the lots are under one zone.
Okay, we'll just wait till there we go.
So the area shown in green is the land to be rezoned so that it's the same zone as the properties that it's going to be added to.
So consistent zoning is where we're going for. Okay. Any questions in regards to this? Any of the councilors? Councilor Brett?
Just looking at the right-of-way through you, Your Worship, looking at the right-of-way through the property, is that township right-of-way? Is it their right-of-way?
That's
Right.
private land.
That's all private
All
land
private
working
land.
right here.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Maybe? I saw it on the tip of your tongue, I can see it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Usually something there. The red zone, that abuts all the other cottages that are there and along the right of way that is being used by all the people who reside there. I'm still not sure why why is it not added to their properties already?
I can speak to that.
I'm Bob Jordan, an Ontario land surveyor, and I'm acting as agent for Mr. Bohusz on this project.
Thank you.
That's a good question, and a lot of the other properties along there, Mr. Bohusz is working with them, and he is talking to them about doing lot additions. Like, it's kind of a liability for him to own all of that land, and he's getting rid of quite a bit of it at the south end with these three applications. There's two that are under consideration now. There was a third that didn't require rezoning. We're doing it all, and then there's two or three others up that line that he's talking to people about adding these lot additions.
So the gentleman that you're just mentioning, he is the present owner of the property and has divided and got sold off these lots for the cottagers?
Not the original parcels, but he's adding a lot of additions. He owns those backlands there.
Any further questions or concerns in regards to this application, Director of Planning?
Okay, through you, I just forgot to mention that this is also on the committee of whole agenda this evening for a recommendation, so this is being put forward for both public meeting and a recommendation this evening.
Thank you. Further questions for Mr. Jordan? Seeing none, we'll end the discussion on this particular agenda item. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, Director of Planning?
Thank you. Through you, this is also a zoning amendment that's resulting as a condition of consent approval, as shown on the sketch on the screen. The bottom portion of the property that's shown as approximate area to be rezoned is to be rezoned to a rural zone that would preclude residential development on the property. The reason for that is that the top portion of the property that abuts the roadway has adequate area for construction, and to build in the backlot area, there would be need to cross a waterway, which would cause alteration to the waterway, which was a concern. So the condition of consent approval was that the southern portion of the lot be rezoned so that it can't be developed for residential uses.
Discussion on this. Councilor Barrett?
I read this, the documents that were presented to us again through you, Your Worship. I was confused as to, it appeared to me there were 100 odd acres, of which there are 2 parcels, and the northern parcel is the one that we're dealing with. And so my question becomes, A, am I correct in saying there were 100 acres, and we're only dealing with the consent number 85, B85, not B86? And B86 is the one in the middle. Is it a separate consent? And is there access from that property to the proposed rezoning area? In other words, how does the landowner of B85, if they can't put a bridge or something across the tributary creek to Wilsey Creek, if I've got this right, we're taking 29 acres. Are the landowners in agreement with this concept?
Through you, are you in the staff report? Is there the staff report of the public meeting?
That was a public meeting.
There's a staff, that's a better image there, which shows the consents. We're only dealing with one consent, there were multiple consents on the property. There is other means of access to the other property that was severed in looking at it. There was only actually one lot created, so there's the lot that has frontage on Dulcemaine Road, which is shown at the bottom of the sketch. And then there's the lot that was created at the top, which has an area of 35 acres, which is the one subject to the zoning amendment at the top. On this sketch, you can see the water course crossing the property that would have to be crossed if there was residential development at the back of the property. So each of the resulting lots has frontage, one on Sand Bay Road and one on Dulcemaine Road. And the lot that's subject to the zoning amendment, which is only the top lot, has adequate area at the top on the north side of the water course to establish a residential use.
Fair enough. And through you again, Your Worship. The lot in the middle, is it by the same owner? Did they purchase both lots separate? Or did I'm assuming the owner was down on Dulcemaine Road and they severed 2 properties off. Did one buyer buy them both, and did they not become one property?
Looking at the severance sketch, the other property in the middle, the one that the cursor is on, has frontage on Russell Road.
So the access to it for building purposes is off Russell Road.
That's correct.
So with this amendment, we are, quote unquote, landlocking 29 acres of land on the northern portion. Does that sound reasonable?
The 29 acres of land that are being rezoned will be a part of the larger lot, which is the northern lot. So the full lot boundary, it's not just the lands north of. But yes, we're not landlocking it, we're saying it can be used for residential purposes. It's still part of the broader land holding.
How do they access that property? The 29 acre portion?
They would have to at some point cross, yes. They would have to cross the
They'd have to
water.
cross the water.
Yes.
And that's precisely the CRCA concern, was crossing the water. So are the landowners in agreement with this concept, or is it just a recommendation at this time from CRCA that they would prefer it to be severed off?
It's
Like,
a
I'm wondering, how big is that creek? And could a person just afford to put a bridge across there? And why are we being asked to say 29 acres of land cannot be used for something, a barn or something of that nature? Because apparently there'll be no Is it just residential? Could a person put a barn back there if they want to be sugar bush?
It's just residential and the lands can be used for agricultural purposes. The only use that's being included from that area is the residential use. The consent was approved by the county and there was an appeal period. There were no appeals to the consent. So the condition with respect to the zoning is in effect and is required to be satisfied to finalize the consent.
It's just residential that is being
Yes.
excluded.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cody and Councillor Green.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know this piece of property well. I agree with Councillor Correll's concerns. It hasn't been mentioned that the property to the east, if I'm not mistaken, belongs to George Horton and is very easily accessible from his property. There's no obstruction there other than a boundary line fence. That tributary that's referred to in the map is no more than a ward ditch. At the widest part at the top wouldn't be 15 feet. Wilsey Creek's a totally different matter. We're talking large body of water. That tributary, I personally paid to have that last dug, which we're going back 40-some years ago now. It is literally a ward ditch that empties out. The mouth of it is right there at the Wilsey, and it meanders through 4 different properties until it hits the water head at the top end. I personally don't care if there's been no challenges to this property, what happens to it. I just find it odd myself that they want to zone it the way they are, but I personally have no objection to it.
Okay. Sorry, I have a question. How big is the total parcel, including the part on the other side of the water?
The total parcel is 35 acres.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beatty, you have a question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, yeah, I was wondering about the ditch, how wide it is, and whether you simply can just drive through it anyways. As Councilor Cody has mentioned, it's probably not much to get across, even if you wanted to. I personally do have a question of why are we excluding any building on it? Certainly there is a floodway or a floodplain there, and water could come up, but I think it's being controlled a lot better now from our rock dam, which does contribute to this waterway. I'm fine with it, but I really don't understand why the zone change.
Councillor Cody, further?
Thank you, Your Worship, and more so to Councillor Beatty. The landfall in that particular section of Wilsey Creek is very adequate. There's no backwater. Water would have to be held back at a significant high level before it would affect that tributary, which it does, it's right here. But as far as year in, year out, no, it doesn't. It doesn't start to flatten out. If you follow the Wilsey Creek down, you'll see it crosses Russell Road. And that's the bridge that we've approved to look into for restructuring this year. From that point on, it basically flatlands right through the Marble Rock, but from there up, there's significant fall on the waterway. That's all, yes.
Any further questions in regards to this part of the agenda? Councillor Burrow?
I'm still in doubt as to why the CRCA in a 3-line letter says, we recommend that the entire part of the proposed lot be settled on B85 south of the tributary to Wilsey Creek. Well, now I'm hearing that the tributary is a ditch. And we're knocking off 29 acres of land. I'm just baffled by that, and I appreciate drainage, and we have bigger fish to fry in drainage room, I guess. I just find it overreach. Thank you.
Councillor Burrow? Oh, sorry, Councillor Oki, I was looking at you, I said the wrong name, I apologize.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Perhaps as people don't know, I am the council's representative on the CRCA, and this is puzzling me as well. I'm tending to think along your lines, Councillor Durrell, that there's a certain amount of overreach here. Councillor Fody, you can confirm that that was a dug ditch. It's not a natural tributary.
Tribute.
They're using the word tributary, which to me means a natural water course.
Through your worship, like he was a tributary before they dug it. And as I said, the last time it was dug was likely in the mid-80s. And Gilbert Construction dug it with their rhino. So it's been a while. There are, the shoreline of that whole tributary is covered with trees such as we have over here. But anyway, it is a water course. There's a lot of water rolls down through there, giving where the source head is at the top. It's actually the source of this is underground well. But it's so cold, livestock won't drink it, but it's that cold literally, no matter what time of year. So that's where it starts, but actually a lot of agricultural land and residential land does drain into that short tributary. But technically it's a ditch.
Councilor Oakley, follow up?
Just, Your Worship, through you, just to follow up then, there's a 35-acre parcel of which about 6 acres is available for building a residence on, and the rest gives somebody a very large back lot subdivided by a natural water course, which is also a ditch. And in that back lot, somebody could build a riding stable, somebody could build a barn. It doesn't prevent them from further developing the property, they just can't make it residential, sub-3.
Correct, based on the recommendations that came through. And that's why we have an old farmer on every council to make sure we know all these don't take that personally.
Clarification here, the word hold.
Any further questions for the planner or the applicant who isn't here? Oh, sorry.
My partner Grant Bennett was the agent on this one.
Can you please come, sorry, can I have you come to the, just so that it's on the record? Thank you.
So my business partner Grant Bennett was the agent on this. So from our perspective, it does seem like overreach. I can't disagree with you there, what the CRCA is recommending, but it also leaves us with 400 feet of frontage on Sand Bay Road and 6 acres, which is lots of room for any residential property. So, our client, Brenda McDowell, is fully aware of what we're doing here. So she has no objections.
Any further questions for Mr. Jordan before he steps down? Thank you so much. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move forward in the agenda. That's it? Okay. Nothing else on the agenda going forward. So we will call this meeting closed at 6:28 p.m. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I apologize. Councilor made the motion, seconded by Councilor Foley, with the public meeting adjourned. I apologize. That's what happens when I don't have my agenda in front of me. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please signify. Thank you. Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Round 2.
You got it. Keep your strength up.
At 6:36 p.m. Any declarations of special interest or general nature thereof?
The teachers union owns the one in between 98 and 108. There has been a proposition by the contractor that I was using to do the ditching and culvert in front of my house It lies in further to the west at the corner of Lex Road and, we'll call it New Lex Road, because it's the addition that Gerald Best has completed, or started anyways. He's proposed that we, first of all, the ditching and culvert is done in front of my house, and then it carries down to 198. That the two leveling culverts would be eliminated that drain onto Bohusz property, eliminating that potential lawsuit going forward. And then it would be carried down to the new section that he's completed to the west with proper drainage out into, I believe it takes it to the river, the Gananoque River, but I don't know what's far down there. Gerald Best has said for the fee, I think it was, I provided it to the township at one point, it was something along the lines of $16,400 to complete the job. So I ask any assistance that you guys can provide, even if it just means allowing me to do the ditching and culvert in front of my own house, but ultimately my goal is to fix the drainage issue on the road, period, so that we don't have to deal with it.
Thank you, Jordan. Director of Operations, do you have any comments to make on this deputation?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to council. Certainly, thank you for coming in, Mr. Peary. You and I know each other, and we've talked a number of times. And Your Worship as well, I believe you met with us as well. Just one point of clarification on what you mentioned, just that you did come into the township office and apply for a permit, and you immediately commenced work. And so, just by virtue of applying for a road occupancy permit, it did not give you permission to actually construct anything on it. Just want to clear that up for our members of council that they're aware. Sort of for the public.
Can I just comment on that there? I wasn't constructing anything. It was to my understanding from the student that was working at the desk that I applied for the permit, the fee wasn't paid, which I knew. I wasn't to commence any of the construction of it until the site visit, which I was waiting for. Is what they were actually doing is they were clearing the trees away to start the project, which I was told I couldn't clear the trees, which I understand. However, it is also, those trees obstruct me pulling out of my driveway anyways, so I thought, we could kind of clear that off and continue on with the project pending the site visit. So nothing was being constructed, no holes were being dug, nothing like that.
Just wanted to be clear on that. Yeah, so and again, we certainly understand the situation. I do understand the situation where we have a roadside drainage that leaves the roadside and enters into private property, just as roadside drainage does, all over the place. In this case, it happens just to go around the back of the home and come back out onto the road allowance, right? Most cases, the roadside ditch will outlet into some water course, and it may encounter another road, a kilometer down or so forth. But in this case, the water comes right back out. There are downstream drainage issues, as Mr. Peary has mentioned, in the farm, the arable lands there, and we acknowledge that. And we acknowledge also the township that there are some issues with the Lex Road downstream of this property being a little wet as well. And so that's what makes me set up and take notice that if we have a roadway asset that could be in jeopardy, then we need to come up with a solution potentially there to protect our public property. So the only other couple comments I'll make is that the proposal that we received from Mr. Peary through Mr. Best, the contractor on the extension project, was a solution, but it was a solution that moved water from one sub-watershed to another, and that's not legal. We can't do that without actually looking into exactly what the flows are and conveyance capacities and all that sort of thing. So we're not legally allowed to move drainage from one sub to another, even if it all ends up in the river. And the other issue that we would have to resolve, and you would as well if you were to do the work on your property or on the road allowance from your property, are that we would be moving water from a natural water course that goes in behind the home. So we would need permission and vetting through the CRC for that as well. So nothing insurmountable, but certainly my recommendation here is through your worship to council, is that we perhaps direct it back to staff for evaluation to put forward before future budget, because I do think there is some work warranted there with respect to that roadway asset that it gets quite wet. And we look at the entire drainage area and see what the solution, the engineered solution would be there. It's undoubted that it would be requiring the cooperation of a number of property owners along there, and it will cost some money. And there's also potential that the municipality, the road authority, myself, can actually compel a Drainage Act drain to be constructed. So I have the ability to do what the homeowners might not be able to do, and that is to compel one to be done. So I don't need to get the 60% that you do.
That's right, sorry, I failed to mention that. This, what I'm proposing is kind of like my last ditch effort at this, is what I've attempted to do, as maybe some of you are aware of, is how it works. To my understanding is that the township doesn't actually manage them. It's kind of an agreement between the property owners and the township to construct those ditches prior to the Drainage Act 96, I think it was. So where I'm at now is I actually attempted to enter the road under a petition under the Drainage Act, to which I would need 60% of the landowners to sign on. Well, the problem is that the ditching and culvert is already completed up to 198 Lex Road, other than my house. So you have people that already have ditching and drainage established that are now going to have to eat the bill for the engineers to come in, and it's a township contract with whoever to come in that they would have to pay ultimately, that they don't want to pay for, or they're saying, well, we have ditching and culverts in front of our house. So really it affects Alex Vahey, Mike, Ian, Sharon and Gary Grice at 80 Lex Road, and myself at 94 Lex Road. So are you going to get 60% of the landowners in the area? Ultimately you're not. And that's why I'm here today, is because I didn't get the 60%.
No, I know, just to try to, because what I'm saying is that the township, the road authority, me, I can actually compel it done without 60%. I can actually cause drainage works to be done under the Drainage Act on behalf of the municipal property. I'm just throwing out that there are a number of options, that if council wishes to direct staff to look at these options and bring them back before this council, this project, I will advise that it will be up against potentially other drainage improvement projects in the township, just like Gant Lake Road and Willow Bank for it. But certainly if it is the desire of council, we can certainly refer back to staff to bring forward more detail at budget time.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Maybe, Councillor Olkey, did you have a comment, Councillor Cody, and then Councillor Cody? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and for you. Thank you very much for coming. I know we talked last year about this when I was first on council, and I'm glad to see you here. I also have gone down the road more than once and down the new extension. The new extension that has been built is to township design for drainage and such. From that new construction to the corner of Lexus and Hiscock School Road, I think the township is a little amiss of actually cleaning out the ditches. It's been left for a long time, hasn't had any real work for some time. Having lived out on Gannock Lake Road for 22 years in my past, I do know that road hasn't seen any substantial work for some time. The other side of this is that we continue to have issues brought up to us by the residents of ditches going in. And I'm not going to get into that one too hard, but I do not see why this ditch is not being done. It blows me away that it's not being looked after. It's one section, maybe one or two homes of that whole road that does not have a ditch at the edge of the road, as we do almost everywhere else. So why are we holding back so hard on this? And yes, there might be a natural aquifer there that goes around the house, but I think that's where God put it, but we put ditches everywhere else. So we need to start doing it and get this solved, because his insurance is not going to pay for any more repairs on that basement or the neighbors. So let's see if we can move this forward, please.
Councillor Wolke, and then Councillor Cody.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. this ground. My former career, I looked at ground a lot. Spent a lot of time in ditches. I lived in it. Okay, what I saw here is this, yeah, thank you. This ditch stops at a certain point, and water empties from it and flows around your house. I don't believe there's a natural water course there at all. I think that's a man-made water course, and I think you're the victim of it. And I agree with my esteemed colleague in council meeting that something must be done about this. I don't think you should be on the hook for it. You've probably suffered enough. Okay? Someone with more local knowledge than me, is it possible to identify a named water course that runs there?
Question. Councilor Bodie, would you like to weigh in on this?
Love the way, thank you, Your Worship. I too, along with a number of the councillors I know, have been to this exact site and talked to Mr. Peary. I thank you for coming and bringing this more formally in front of council. I agree with what my esteemed colleague says, Gordis and Fire Forest. It's a short fix. I think my take when I go out to see this property here, the water flows up. I fully agree that that wasn't a natural water course. It may have been a slight at one time when it was, you know, exemplified with a high hole back in the day, likely prior to your house even being built. It was likely just a swale to kind of redirect it away from the road. Well, in hindsight, is there any, I got a question for you, Mr. Peary. In your view, does any of the water that comes from the field, is there any of that water that doesn't eventually get back into the roadway ditch anyway? It goes by your basement and such, but it all eventually goes back into the road, does it not?
My house slows it down. Essentially, it goes from, it does. It goes from 80 Lex Road to 108. So a big U from one ditch and culvert to the next. But as a result of that, with water sitting, even though it's still flowing, it causes oversaturation of groundwater, which no sub pump can stop the effect of water pushing from the ground up through a foundation. So that's why insurance won't cover it. You could have 10 sub pumps if you want. It won't stop it from getting through the cracks.
Follow-up, Mr. Councilor Bodie?
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you for somewhat answering that your house becomes a sieve for the whole community. But I agree that this, we could give this direction to our operations manager if we so wish, but this is a quick fix. I think it's a nice gesture you're offering to pay. Sitting at the council table, I don't want you to. I don't want you paying for property that should be maintained by us. That's our responsibility, and that's why we're here. And, but furthermore, I don't want someday for you to say, well, I paid for it, so therefore you can't do this. So if we properly do our job via the proper channels, we'll do two things. We'll put the waterwork block, which is right down a new ditch, and put it into the existing. And if it requires a little bit more remediation further on down to accept the new piece that Jordan-Bennett has built and so on, so be it. But this is really a quick fix when it comes to cost. It's not prohibitive. If we can circumvent engineering costs by giving direction to our operations manager, then I'm all in.
Councilor Maybe, then Councilor Jameson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a follow-up. Is there any indication of what the material is right where the ditch would be? Is it rock or just soil?
I've had pilot holes dug, 5 of them, and it appears just to be soil with the roots.
Councilor Jameson?
Yes, through your worship, I think I heard the works manager, works director mention that this would be considered with respect to next year's budget. Did I hear you say that?
Director?
Thank you, Your Worship. Council can certainly direct me to do whatever. However, I will add that I will require clear direction if you are wanting me to proceed ahead with contrary to my recommendations.
Just, Your Worship, I guess my concern there is that this is not an area that I have kind of understanding of my colleague to the right does, but what is the impact if this is a budget item that does get passed for months, and then we're sitting next spring when we could have some serious problems, what remedial measures need to be taken in the immediate sense to ensure that we don't have another delegation wasting the gentleman's time to get something done. This is really my concern.
I think that the director made a point that he would bring back a staff recommendation to the next council meeting, and I think frost doesn't go into the ground until December-ish. So depending on what direction would come from that recommendation, and if there is immediate work that needs to be done, we still have a time frame. I realize that it's not set out in the budget, but that it could be set out in the following. I don't think if there's any remediation that can be done prior to the fall. If we decide that it's part of our road work or capital budget. But I think that if we I would say that it would be the October meeting at the earliest that you can get something back to us with any sort of, would that be reasonable, Director?
Your Worship, regardless of the time frame, my recommendation will be that we have someone look into those drainage areas. It's very important for me to make you aware of the potential for liability, and I see it here. So again, respectfully to everyone around, there's a tendency, with respect to everyone in the room, to oversimplify drainage issues in their resolution. And again, respectfully to those around the table, I do not believe that it is as simple as going out and cleaning out a ditch.
So as far as timing, as far as getting back the information that you require, what sort of time frame are we looking at?
If council desires, I could have something ready by October, but I can't say that it'll be fulsome. And again, if engineering is not what this council wants me to do, then it's going to be a relatively quick report. With outlining options this council can take and further accept those responsibilities.
Council Cody and then Council Bailey, and then we'll wrap this up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want clarification from the operations manager. So you would prefer engineering report on this?
Through your worship, yeah, I guess that's my point, is we know we have a low point there in the road, we know we have drainage issues. The answer would appear to be dig a ditch, in the one direction, right? And I've already told you that moves water from one salt watershed to another, which it may be adequate, right? That conveyance may be adequate. We don't know how many hectares are draining through here. We don't know the time of concentration. We don't know any of that, right? So again, it's not, in my DNA just to go out there and dig holes and hope for the best. It opens us to liability, further damage to the roadway, further loss of the crops. Again, we understand that there's issues here with the basement and the water course. We understand that there is potential this could become a capital project, and I've been very clear to Mr. Beery and Her Worship on this. It's just a matter of timing. Right? The last couple of years I've been here, we've focused on a couple of what we consider to be asset-preserving drainage projects at a cost of $50,000 to $60,000 a pop. And so, again, there are needs everywhere, and my angle on this would be to bring back those options to this council for you to be able to make that informed decision of whether this project is where we feel capital dollars are best sunk.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
My neighbors at 80 Lex Road have dealt with this very issue for 38 years, okay? It drains from property that is owned by the township. I'm not trying to force anyone's hand. I'm not saying, you guys have to do this. I attempted to pay for this out of my own pocket to alleviate. I haven't fixed my basement yet. It sits still with flood damage from 2 years ago, okay? I have spoken with legal representation from multiple firms in the area. They have all said to me, you present this case to council in a way that is politically correct, right? Much like I've done. And if something were not to be done with it in a timely manner, you may be able to present this as a negligence case for the township for not dealing with the water that is an issue from township property that directly drains onto my property. Now, obviously I don't want to go down that route. I've made it clear to everyone I've spoke to, but spring and autumn. Every spring and autumn, I just cringe because this causes my basement to flood. And it's not, like, you can say, well, you know, you can't do the ditching and culvert in front of your house because it might cause issues. Basically, is what I hear from that is you don't want the water to move where it's already going faster because you're gonna have to deal with Mr. Wahi down the road, to which you've claimed those two leveling culverts are a proper outlet. So if it's a proper outlet, why can't I just do my ditching and culvert? You know, aside from me taking this on everyone else's problem on the road, I could just say, you know what? With them, they can go deal with their own issue. I want to fight for just getting mine done because you've claimed that it's a proper outlet down there. So let me take the water that's already going there, get it there without going around my property.
So I think it's the way that's being left is that there's going to be a staff report back to council with recommendations on how to go forward with this as soon as the October meeting, unless there's any further direction from council. And we do appreciate you coming forward and making us aware of this issue. And I appreciate you speaking with me directly as well. Councillor Garrett?
Through you, Your Worship, I read in the previous bylaws that we actually have a drainage superintendent. No doubt we pay for the services on our staff. And I understand that he spoke with you, is that correct, Jordan?
That's correct.
What were his words to you concerning the efficacy of putting that drain in?
He said that I couldn't put the ditching and culvert in because it changes the water course and there is not a proper outlet at the end of the road. I mean, you were there as well, Mr. Goheen. I'm sure you can speak to exactly what was said. That was somewhere along the lines of what was said, right?
Your Worship, yeah, I think it's nothing inconsistent with what we've been talking about so far. What I've been saying is pretty much consistent, but we were referring to Mr. Shan, because Mr. Shan also had attended Mr. Perry's site.
No, not Mr. Shan. It's by bylaw, previous, 2 or 3 years ago, it would be Mr. Tuck.
And Councillor, maybe you had another comment?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. You had an estimate for the project that you were going to go ahead with. Do you recall that number?
The estimate for the ditching and culvert in front of my own house or to alleviate the issue for the entire road?
Because you're talking about 2 residences side by side, yours and the
Uh, Yeah, so actually, the property, most of what needs to be done is actually township property in front of the lot 80 Lex Road to my neighbors. And I've wanted to pay out of my own pocket to have that done for both of us because their basement also floods, but that was somewhere along the lines of like $3,000. I already have, I paid for the culverts. There's 2 sections that are actually in my driveway right now awaiting for the project. So it's,
So would it be, I think it would be remiss for us to not have an engineer's report to say that, because I think the other point that you're trying to make, George Goheen, is that if we just dig the ditch and then and we flood 2 houses down further, if we were to do that, to make sure that whatever ditching was in there is appropriate for the water needs that may be going through there, but that would be part of the report that you would bring forward.
Correct, Your Worship. I think my whole point here is that if we're going to sink public funds, if we're going to put effort into it, then let's do it right. Let's manage our liabilities when it comes to the legalities of drainage. I'm just trying to guide council in resolving this in just the best way that we can for all concerned.
Okay, Councilor Morell, and then we'll tie this up.
Just one final comment in that report, and I would like added, what is the drainage situation on Mr. Best's property? Which direction does it go? And because you use the word another drainage system, and rather than this may be just a blockage in the same system, you use the exact term, we can't be dumping water into another drainage system. So in that report, where's Mr. Best's water going? Is it the same drainage system or is it a different one? I've seen this property and it looks to me like it's just a piece of high ground that's pretty basic stuff, and I do appreciate the Drainage Act and so on, but we're putting this gentleman through quite a ringer here, and protecting our liability in the township. Mr. Best was given a lot of approvals. Where's his water going? Because I think that this water is going to end up in the same place, no different.
Before we carry on, and I know you want to wrap this up, the issue I have, as much as Gerald Best has been, very helpful to me, and I consider him a friend, that section of road that Mr. Maybe mentioned actually adheres to the town policy. I think maybe you should relook at where that water does go, because at the corner of Lex Road and Bill Lex's driveway, which runs north-south, is a low spot. The water comes from the middle of the hill down, and it comes from the 198 and over. So there's two ditches that go to one low spot with no proper outlet for it. So, I mean, I had mentioned to the township before that that section hasn't been formally taken over by the township. It's still unassumed and used at your own risk. That maybe going forward with the township, they might want to suggest that that get fixed and cleaned up anyways, which would be the job at $16,400 that was quoted by Gerald Best. So kind of him having to do that on his own, because it is a section of road he took on.
Okay, so we'll definitely have some response back from staff in regards to this, and then we'll hopefully have some answers for us sooner. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to number 4, staff reports, fire report number FI 008-19, open air burn law. Chief, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to council. The burn bylaw that we have in place over the last few years, since 2001, I think it was, doesn't been kept up to date, was never signed by council, and therefore probably didn't carry a lot of weight. In the last few years, we've had several burning complaints. The old tradition of the old school people burning their trash or whatever in their backyards is causing a lot of grief, and we curtailed that in the built-up areas in the last year by disallowing any burning of anything in the villages. We have addressed some of those issues with people that had concerns that their property did conform to out-of-town standards where they could burn and not interfere with the livelihood or the enjoyment of the property of their neighbors. However, a lot of them do still want to burn things that shouldn't be burned, and campfires are even disallowed in the villages. We're encouraging in the build-up areas to go to propane-powered fireplaces or pits or whatever to avoid the issue with the number of people that today seem to have COPD, asthma, and so on in the villages. I've addressed in the last week 2 situations just similar to that, and the neighbors were impacted quite heavily with the smoke that was coming from these incinerators. So we want to curtail that. We want to beef up our bylaw with some standards that we can adhere to. We want to change the levels of a burn ban where we can differentiate between a total burn ban and a partial burn ban, if you will, and several other issues that have come to light over the years with burning.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief on this particular item? Councilor Moody?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, Chief Lawson. Do you have smokers listed here, particularly in the built-up areas? If somebody was using a smoker and that smoke that's from smoking can be very strong. Having had one at my house now since the kids moved back in, it can be very, very strong, just like a wood fire would choke you out. So I wonder if in our built-up areas whether you have that listed.
We don't have cooking utensils or cooking bylaw, I guess, if you will. Some of the units I do know what you're talking about there with the smokers. It's one of those things where neighbors have to respect neighbors, I think, in a lot of places. That if you do have a smoker in your backyard and you want to use it,
Yeah, don't wait until the wind's blowing in your neighbor's window, I guess. But a little respect for your neighbors, I think, would go a long way, and the units are out once the food is done, and that's one of the recommendations of the campfire. In a burn ban situation, is you can cook on a campfire, but it has to go out just as soon as the food is cooked.
Go ahead, follow.
And just as a follow-up, I did recently just get a burn permit myself for my own, since I have a fairly large burn pit, and it was fairly simple, other than when I went to your ITI burn permits, it wouldn't let me in that way, so I went in through the township, through the fire services, so I don't know whether there was a little glitch with that, or, anyways, I got mine, so I'm good.
Councillor Cody.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just glad that, I would like to think that we're going to give this a green light and pass this. If we've had this on the books since 2001, there's a lot of shame and blame to go around a number of people over a long period of time. It's just neglect that this is sat idleness on. Shameful action.
Councillor Jameson and Councillor Gordon.
Your Worship, I had the opportunity to exchange messages with the chief on this, because there have been a couple of issues in at least one of the villages in the ward, well, actually, both villages in our ward, to the extent that, and I just want to, hopefully I've got this right, Chief, that as a result of getting this passed, we can start to take a look at what we really need to do in the villages. I was dealing with a couple of neighbors concerned about quite a large fire pit in a backyard, proximity to houses that would be very few meters away from the pit. And it became a level of complaint, but at the time I was told, and this is just a few months ago, that it was probably okay, but there wasn't a lot of clarity, and the chief subsequently has let me know that that would not be okay as we move forward, and I look forward to the opportunity to see that applied reasonably but consistently in our built-up areas.
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, and to you, Your Worship. I commend the concept. I have a lot of concerns concerning the setbacks. And Chief Lawson, do those setbacks come from a manual, or were they established by us in the township? And I'm referring to roads, ignition items, buildings, anything. It struck me, and I read it very carefully, it struck me as being very restrictive, and there would be a ton of properties in rural areas that would never be able to measure out and put a fire pit. And that may be the desire of the township to say, frankly, we don't want any burning, because that was very restrictive, and I could name a bunch of properties. And when I look at the island properties, and I'll mention Tar Island, those properties are so tiny in their width, you would never be able to put a campfire in any of those properties. And the chances of this township enforcing that, I don't give you much chance at it. You wouldn't have enough enforcement agents. They are also people from away. Another concern that was brought to my attention is no one in this township understands our rules, particularly our summer people. If we are going to pass this bylaw, we need to send a letter out to everybody who is a taxpayer, because I've had complaints, because it's summertime, household garbage burning, the worst of the worst, I won't use the names and stuff, the worst of the worst, and people from away, south of the border, are very unaware of the potential rules we have. So number one, the setbacks. Can we reduce them? Number two, enforcement. We don't have a fire prevention officer. We have one bylaw officer and yourself. And I just don't see that, I can make a phone call to my neighbor and say, hey, guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to have an $800 bill in your mail. So I have some real concerns about it. The concept, okay, the setbacks are a big concern. Can we reduce them? Or would it interfere with proper fire management, I guess? Thank you.
Chief, I'm just gonna put this motion on the floor because I should have done that at the beginning of the discussion, and I apologize. Moved by Councilor Jameson, seconded by Councilor Cody, that committee level recommends that council authorize the mayor and clerk to pass a bylaw to regulate open air burning in the township of Leeds in 1,000 hours. So answer the questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Councilor Gurel. To your questions about the setbacks, they were a standard probably across the industry that are set in, it curtails a lot of the burning in the smaller villages and lot sizes and so on. That's where it's kind of directed to. What we do know is across the board, I don't want to curtail, and I have told people this at cottages and different things, I called during the burn ban and said I can't enjoy my campfire at my cottage because you got burn ban on. I said, well, it's like this, it's a minor burn ban at this point. Will allow you to use your campfire, but make sure it's attended to put in. We do have across the whole municipality, probably several burn pits, incinerators, I see them every day, that are non-conforming to any specific setback. What this applies to is when there is a problem, you've set fire to your neighbor's field, you've set fire to the neighbor's property, we can go in at that time and start doing measurements and saying, you're the cause of the fire that burned down your neighbor's house, therefore your burn barrel isn't set back properly. These are standards, it's non-conforming, and there are charges that could apply there. But it's only on a complaint-based issue that we would be in there doing that. For the most part, people will be quite content to take care of their fire pits, their incinerators, that's in the areas where they're allowed. And it's just when we do get complaints, where we do have fire, that we can address these issues with these setback areas.
Further discussion on this motion? Any further comments or questions on this motion? Councilor Wilkie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just general, the indefinite nature of some of the provisions are what causes a lot of grief. Burning any materials. People will be calling, does that mean my firewood? You know, I know it's hard to be more definite in these things, but my suggestion would be this bylaw isn't ready in terms of its English.
Further discussion, Councilor Burrell?
Sorry, more of a technical point. As I read this, by the way, what was presented to me, it's two bylaws sort of with the same name, and I think that's just a technicality, but if you look at it, the first one has some lettering, and it ends with the signature of the mayor and clerk, and then there's the next one. That's just a technicality. I'm assuming that a big portion of that is going to, it is one bylaw, because it reads like two.
Should only be one bylaw.
So that's what we're voting on now.
So I've heard that that perhaps this isn't ready to be passed. Maybe there's some more discussion further on this, or I can call the question, or we can defer it, or I can call the question. I'm looking for consensus around the table. If you think it's ready to be voted on, then we can move forward, or if you'd like to go back to the chief and have further discussion about the technical details. I would acquiesce to the fact that when you're talking about any material, then it is wood is for campfire. It's needs to be maybe a little more clear, and I'd rather get it right the first time. Chief?
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. The materials that we're talking about, I think were addressed in one of the paragraphs about not any materials. It was more to the treated wood products, toluenes, plastics, styrofoams, and so on. General garbage, household garbage. The other night I dealt with one that was manure, pet manure, and it wasn't that great. And it was in the middle of the village Lansdale. I just explained to the gentleman, would you like it if your next door neighbor did the same thing and it blew in your windows? To which he replied, no, I just said, So that was the type of thing that we're trying to curtail, is any of the toxic materials, not necessarily any wood products. If you're burning firewood or you're burning charcoal in your barbecue or whatever, we're more than happy with that. It's the offensive materials. When it burns, there's a toxic gas given off, and people are getting sick.
Councilor Burrow?
Once again, I appreciate the enforcement, but if it isn't convenient, and if someone is on an island and they're burning their garbage because they live on an island and there's no garbage pickup, and they don't know any better, who's going to drive out there and issue, put their fire out for them and issue them a fine because a neighbor said Joe Blow down the way here on the island is burning garbage, and that is a real deal there.
Any
Through
further?
your worship, just to answer Councilor Charles' question there, we will respond to those calls on a complaint basis. That's where we're driven, that we have to respond to calls in the township from a resident, to a taxpayer who has made a complaint. Maybe it's a neighbor-on-neighbor deal, but we'll sort that out when we get there. If it is that they have burned garbage, it's quite evident with the residue that's in these pits and incinerators and things, and no respect for the neighbor. It is against the bylaw, as it states here, to burn garbage and toxic materials, and therefore we could levy fines. The biggest thing is we've been issuing warnings. This is against the bylaw. We cannot do this. If you would cooperate with us, at this time it's a warning. Next time we come, we'll have to levy fines. And that's what the bylaws will do, is to have some teeth, that we can actually, on repeat offenders, do that.
Okay, Councilor Jameson and Councilor Cody.
Your worship, I appreciate Councilor Burrell's point about enforcement. But I think I also the point he made earlier about education, really the fundamental challenge we will have in education. Clearly, we can defer it, but like a lot of things in the township, including property standards, bylaws, and so on, we are lacking in the township, and we look at it. And this is another example of it. And we start with the built-up areas, that is the villages, where really we can set the example and set the pace. My question is, unless we really understand what the technical limitations are to this particular bylaw, I would like to know that before we consider deferral. I would rather see it move forward and get into the process of educating our residents and our neighbors to this challenge and moving forward on that basis.
Councilor Cody?
Thank you, Your Worship. I too would like to see this move forward. It's been sitting here collecting dust since 2001. I think Councilor Burrell maybe made the best comment on this whole subject matter. If we should pass this, get it in a print form and get it out to all the residents who are on our tax roll and make them informed. But as Councilor Jameson said, our education process has started, but I have a lot of confidence in our fire chief and the comments he's made so far tonight in that, how he will address these given situations. But until we get a rule, we have no rule.
Sorry, Councilor Grove, just 1 second. It's been suggested that maybe we make an amendment to the motion, which basically allows for further review before it comes to council for final passing, and then we could have further comment for clarity and wording before it comes for confirmation before it comes to council. Would that be okay? Councilor Grove?
I think that's a step in the right direction, and I was just wondering, I am a little concerned again about the setbacks, because I appreciate what Chief Lawson has said, that there is some wiggle room in here, but when we start putting numbers on a piece of paper, that does reduce wiggle room. And I'm wondering if we can't change some of that wording to reflect some wiggle room in there and saying, safe manner or something of that nature. I know what I consider safe might be different than the next guy, but if I'm standing by the fire with a bucket of water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that was safer. And yet we have these hard rules, 20 meters from this, 20 meters from that, 20 meters from this, about everything. If we put it on paper, does that open us up to a situation we don't want to be having? And yet, have the flexibility to allow campfires on smaller properties.
So, I think that basically I just reread the motion, we actually need to amend it, because it says that committee of the whole recommends that council authorize the mayor and clerk to pass a bylaw to regulate open air burning in the township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands. So what we can direct staff is to double check the setbacks, the clarity of the bylaw that should come forward for confirmation, and then at council, we can either turn it, approve it or turn it down. One of the comments made by the CAO and I believe the chief, why this is coming to council is right now we're operating with nothing, which puts us in a very bad position because we have zero jurisdiction when it comes to, I shouldn't say we have zero, but it doesn't look good when it comes to having our house in order. I don't think it's wise to ram anything through, but I think this motion, the way it is written, is to pass a bylaw. So it doesn't say the specific wording, the wording that's been suggested, and perhaps council can make suggestions to the chief to have the final draft come to council for further discussion. Is that okay, chief?
Just one comment, though, I did mention that it was on a per situation basis, that if you did have a fire in a certain area, you found the burn barrel was up against the fence, set fire to the hedgerow or whatever, we can go back to the bylaw and say, okay, that was supposed to be 60 feet away. It's not, therefore, you applied for a burn permit, it states here that it did, and you didn't do that. 99% of them out there aren't going to be in that magic number that we put down on black and white. However, they're going to be totally safe and totally run with care and consistency that isn't going to set fire to anything. But it's those ones that have the fire, wound up, they're up against their neighbor's fence, they're up against their barn or wherever, they're the ones that we will apply the bylaw to. And if it's indiscretion as well, but it's not going to be something we're going to race out and start being fire Nazis. It's going to be on those per basis calls that we get the complaint, or we get the fire actually evolving from a fire pit or a incinerator that hasn't been properly installed. It's not a hard and fast rule that we're going to make everybody move every piece of equipment they have in their backyard, or move the fire pits that they've spent thousands of dollars to stone in. And the campfires at the cottages and so on are fine as long as they're operated properly. It's just those complaint bases that are going to be. Or if a new customer come in, a new taxpayer want to build something, it could be recommended, and it could be on a per site visit then to look at it and say, you'll be fine, we can change the rules for you here.
So, any further discussion on the motion as it is presented? I think it's clear that if there's any changes to be made, that they need to, or suggestions for changes that can be made to the chief and can be brought forward in the final version of the bylaw before it's passed in council. So again, moved by Councilor Jameson, seconded by Councilor Fody, that committee will recommend the council authorize the mayor and clerk to pass a bylaw to regulate open air burning in the township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands. All those in favor of said motion? All those opposed? Carried. Next on the agenda, moved by Councilor Fody, seconded by Councilor Maybe, that the committee will recommend that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the subject property from rural to shoreline residential attached to planning report number PL-022-19 as Exhibit A. Director of Planning, would you like to speak to this motion?
Thank you, through your worship. This report, as well as the following report, are coming out of public meetings that were held this evening with respect to zoning amendments. Each of these are conditions of consent approval that are required to allow the applicants to finalize the consents. I'd be happy to
questions for the planner in regards to these recommendations? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please signify. All those opposed, carried. Next motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that committee of the whole recommends that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment to rezone subject property from rural to rural special exception zone RUXX as attached to planning report number PL-024-19 as Exhibit A. Director of Planning, would you like to speak to this motion?
Through yours, this is the same situation as the previous. We had a public meeting this evening, there was no public input. This is to satisfy the conditions of consent.
Thank you. Any further questions in regards to this motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, carried. Okay. So next on the agenda is the Rockport Customs House renaming, and that we received an in-camera report that I received direction in camera at the last meeting in August from council to make this announcement at the official naming of the Rockport Customs House on August the 10th, and that the necessary bylaw be prepared for approval. Kim Goodman, Manager of Community and Business Services, provided an in-camera report, and the recommendation is that council direct the mayor to announce the dedication of Rockport Customs House in honor of Gordon Keith Brown at a public ceremony on August 10th, 2019, and that further council directs staff to bring forward the bylaw to confirm the dedication back at the next regular meeting of council. So the next regular meeting of council is next Monday night, but I felt that it warranted discussion this evening for clarification purposes that we did follow proper procedure in regards to that, but that it was done to honor our former MP, and the discussion was an easy one, to be honest, and it was a great day for the Rockport Customs Group, the Friends of Rockport Customs, who worked very diligently to rehabilitate that property, and it was a very proud day to be part of that, and we thank the group for all the work that they've done. So that would be coming forward to council. Now, number 6, on a notice of motion, there's 3 notices of motion. Councilor Cody, would you like to speak to the flashing light intersection County Road 2 and County Road 3? Please, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. As I mentioned at a previous meeting, actual neighbor of mine, I don't want to take credit where it's not due. Neighbor of mine suggested this in occurrence to an accident that took place involving a tractor trailer, pickup truck here about 6 weeks ago. And it's pretty self-explanatory. We have a flashing red light heading north on Reynolds Road to Highway 2. And with all the activity of the Rapid Valley Restaurant, the traffic there with all around the fuel islands back at the restaurant, it is a dangerous intersection at best. If we can alleviate another incident or worst case scenario of death, then by all means, we need a red flashing light there.
So the formal notice of motion will be coming forward to council. Thank you very much. Councilor Maybe, notice of motion flashing light on stop sign at 401 and County Road 2 westbound ramp.
Thank you, Your Worship. It has been brought to my attention by a resident whose son happened to be riding a motorcycle and got T-boned at this and spent some months rehabilitating and in the hospital. But having been a long-time resident of this area, there's been plenty of accidents there. Over 10 years ago, there was somebody actually killed there. The MTO has tried to mitigate it by realigning the rampway, but at this point, I do believe we do need a flashing red light on top of each stop sign, which has to be a 4-foot stop sign in that. And there was an accident on Sunday that did result in injury. So we just need to move this forward, get MTO to step up and get a light there. Next thing would be actually traffic lights. And I don't think we need to maybe go there yet, but if it continues, that might be the next recommendation. But definitely love to see a flashing red light on top of both those stop signs to see if we can mitigate any more accidents at that intersection.
Thank you very much, Councilor Beatty. So we look forward to those 3 notices of motion.
Still have done.
Oh, sorry, and apologize, I'm cutting you off early. So the next notice of motion is letter to the MTO Class G driver retesting.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's 2 of us here, and I don't know how many others have special licenses that you have to be retested on a regular basis. I know for Terry and I, we're being retested every 5 years with medical and such. It came to mind that with distracted driving, young drivers and such, there's new rules all the time. Even our stopping at school buses fines have changed over the last year, let alone distracted driving, cell phones and such. My recommendation is that G-Class drivers get tested every 10 years. This is a written test. It's to re-educate, retest the skills, and bring forth any new regulations that have been brought forward through MTO to the drivers, because I think it's vital that refresher, even if somebody takes and rereads the book, and I know I do every time I do a test, you're going to capture something more out of it. And it's important that we try to help our citizens stay safe. We travel up and down 401 many, many times, and I can see many people who are distracted drivers in many ways. Even coming home tonight, there's somebody there, he's like this driving, and he's over the center line toward me, you know, for what reason, I don't know. And I'm sure Councilor Fody could also have more recounts than Jake Stick at with his commercial driving that he's done. But I think we need to move forward and have a recommendation to MTO that G-Class drivers are tested every 10 years, just a written test. If they fail that, then there might be more testing required. But at least it would give them and reinforce the education that they have had and the abilities that they do have, and just to instill in their mind what they're doing out on that road. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those notices of motion from both councillors. Appreciate that. Before I go on to my mayor's update, I'm going to ask Councillor Jameson to say a few words about our trip to AMO in Ottawa. Councillor Opie, myself, and Councillor Jameson were in attendance along with Nigel White and Adam Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we were at the AMO conference in Ottawa at the expense of our local taxpayers, so that it is very important for us to see value in that and to discuss among ourselves as we move forward whether these are things we need to do, whether it's Roma or good roads or whatever it happens to be. There are approximately 900 delegates there. Half of those delegates were elected council, so it's more than just people like us and councillors from all over the province, which was an interesting opportunity, especially for the sidebar conversations that we had with people. Broad range of topics. Mayor was very good about ensuring that we all we divvied up the various sessions so that we covered as much as possible. Among the 4 of us, I managed to get the ones that were farthest away from where we had to be for the next one. But I'm willing to forgive you for that. But we learned an awful lot, I thought. I think the value in these gatherings, in this particular gathering, was the information that was shared, everything from economic development to fire services, and to the lot of challenges that all of the municipalities are facing, the successes and the failures that some of the municipalities have seen with respect to certain topics. And keeping it as broad as possible, this information should inform us as we move into our operational review and our budget process. And as I said, contact with other council members was very important, side conversations and opportunities perhaps to look at sharing. In this current environment, we are going to see some challenges ahead of us that perhaps the last 4 to 8 years we have not seen. So there's very, very good reason to stay close to the people that we met. The presence of both the Premier and all members of the Cabinet does reflect the importance of municipal government in the political zeitgeist. I'm not sure if it's doing us any good, but we are a powerful lobby. Now, a personal comment, and it was pretty clear to me in listening to the Premier as well as the Cabinet, there was nothing there to suggest that some of the expectations of downloading that we may see over the next year or two, there's certainly nothing that gave me the feeling that that was in any way mitigated. I think we're going to see some things that we need to prepare ourselves for, prepare our residents for, and it isn't just us, it's higher tier governments, whether it's social services or transfers to municipalities. I think we need to be prepared, and this is what I took away, to manage in a more severely restricted environment over the next 3 or 4 years. It's not something you want to bring home. You'd like to bring home a check, but that didn't happen. So that was my personal takeaway, and not reflecting other members of the council. But I think it was well worthwhile, a pretty good investment. I drove Councillor Oki there and back, and I will not put in for irritation pay. It was a pleasant experience for me to drive with the council. Thank you.
Councillor Cody.
Thank you, Your Worship, that's comforting. I just didn't want to supersede your mayor's report, so I just had a few thank yous I want to pass out. First, to the fire department. They had a tough job in the sense that they had to honor 2 of their own since our last council meeting. And I get a little emotional having known both of them. But I want to thank Chief Lawson for a stellar job in setting those men out the way he did. I honor him the way he did as well. Secondly, I want to thank the Works Department, projects that you've completed. They're looking good, mainly like the Toudal Road Bridge. I was up by there the other day. It looks real good. And another little spin-off that happened the very same day, quite by accident, by traveling through the backwoods, as I call it, to Perth. I came across one little narrow canal, and not one but 2 boats were traveling through that canal. So while they're being tracked in that canal, it gives me ample time to jump out and chat. And these people were from Germany, and they said they would definitely come back again and certainly love the boat experience. Thirdly, and not least, to you, Madam Mayor, you attended on our behalf at the IJC meeting about a week ago, and I want to thank you for representing us, not just in person, but representing us well. The media didn't let that slip either. They picked it up, both Kingston, Brockville, and they quoted you on more than one occasion of driving home the fact of how important this is and what it means to our waterfront homeowners. So I want to thank you for doing that.
Any further, and Councillor Maiden has an announcement. I opened up the floor, and then Councillor Oki. Do you have anything, Councillor Burrell, to add at the end? Might as well make a full suite, so we'll go with Councillor Maiden first.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mine is to invite council members, and we are hoping that somebody can attend. I'm part of the Terry Fox Dream Team, as they call it, Thousand Islands Terry Fox run. I do a lot of announcing there, usually in a louder voice than I use here. But on Tuesday the 10th, 10 to 2 at Fox Run, Fred Fox, the oldest Fox boy, will be here talking to residents, and we'd love to have somebody from the township there. I don't know whether we have certificates. 10th Tuesday between 10 and 2, if there's a representative. And as mentioned, I don't know whether there's anything that we give away to dignitaries who visit our borough, but if there was something, it would be greatly appreciated. And also with that, the Terry Fox Run is the blank. It's the Sunday, very next Sunday, 15th. And again, that's Fox's teams and getting teams together to participate. We go down the Parkway. I open up Terry Fox one there and then open the one in Gananoque and come back and do some announcements. But there is always some good information on the cancer front. I don't know anybody who is not touched by that sad disease. So please come and support. And if you have somebody at that particular meeting, it would be wonderful. Thank you.
Councillor Olby.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two things I'd like to answer, rather different. First thing that I would say is a very sincere thank you to yourself, my colleagues and staff, and everybody in the community who sent condolences on the death of my sister. And I'll just leave it there. Thank you very much, everyone.
And I should have expressed regrets from Deputy Mayor Lackey, who was unable to make the meeting this evening, and he did send his regrets earlier. So I will move on with my mayor's update, which is quite extensive, and I will try to get through it quite quickly. To go back to the IJC meeting, that meeting was held a week ago this evening in Brockville at St. Lawrence College with a number of all the other Seaway mayors were in attendance, except the town of Gananoque at the time, along with some other MPs who were in attendance from Cheryl Lawrence and another, it's escaped me, I apologize, and a number of members from the board who were there. I was sort of quipping that it was a good thing I didn't wear a red dress because it would have matched my face at a certain point in time that I was giving my comments, mainly because that our residents and our businesses have deserved much better communication than they've received, but moreover, the plan for the future, if any, needs to be clearly communicated, because as of right now, based on the plan that is presented the way it is, we are faced with something particularly horrific for next year, if nothing changes. So just based on average rainfalls and the current levels of the Great Lakes, all the water's got to come through the straw, which is us down in Montreal. So we will be pressing the IJC to get more information out to the residents that is in better terms, in layman's terms, and we are hopeful that they will schedule an open house, but keep in mind that the writ will probably be dropped in the next week and a half, 2 weeks, which will sort of stop everything, unfortunately, for those 30-some days. So I will keep everybody abreast of that issue as it goes forward, but please note, I will be looking for direction from council if there's further lobbying required at Parliament Hill and at Queen's Park if necessary. So just keep that on the radar. There's a number of things that have happened over the last little while. We were involved with the United Way golf fundraiser for Gordon Brown in benefit of the County 150 rink, as well as the United Way, which a number of our residents would benefit from those services that United Way supports. Rockport Customs opening and the Gordon Brown dedication of the building, the Customs House building, which is on the 10th. American Graffiti in Sealy's Bay was another huge success as always. It was a great weekend for Sealy's Bay, and there was something else on that day as well. Oh, plowing match was that day, and a number of the members here as well attended, and I plowed a very straight furrow. I was impressed with myself, and anyways, because I was never allowed to plow, so it was a big opportunity for me. September 6th is the community grant deadline, so very important for all those community groups that are looking for additional funding for capital projects, and we've changed the guidelines somewhat, so it's not all about capital projects. There is some leeway in those guidelines now, so please, if you have not made your grant application, please get it in. September 7th is the Horse Festival in Lansdowne. September 13th, the OLG recognition event and a public movie, which is going to be happening in Gananoque at the Town Park. I'll get further details out to the council about that and on my Facebook page. 21st September is the Lyndhurst Turkey Fair. 26th is the Seniors Picnic at Charleston Lake, and that's the 4th annual for that. 27th of September is Small Halls Festival in Sealy's Bay, followed by, on the 28th of Sealy's Bay Turkey Dinner. So if everybody's having some cravings for turkey, and it's a little early for Thanksgiving, but you might want to head there. Also, just to make people aware, we had a PA Day today for Upper Canada District School Board and the Catholic District School Board in our jurisdiction. Kids did not go back to school today. Tomorrow is the first day of school, so we ask that people be very mindful of school buses and pay attention. We have had some requests in regards to community safe zones near Sweet Corners Road, which we've sent to the county because they're on county roads as well as here in Lansdowne. It is quasi signed here, but people have to slow down in the village supposedly to a 50 zone already, but out where Sweet Corners is, that's an 80 zone, so it's considerably different. So we will be going down that path, so you'll hear more from me from county in regards to that. I would really like to thank our seasonal summer staff that we have had here. They do park operations, maintenance and lawn, flowers and horticulture, and they also take care of the swim program as well as the Sealy Bay Marine Harbor. Without all of those summer staff, we would not be able to keep up with all the extra work. And also that forward-facing piece for all people that come to the township and attend our facilities or parks, wherever they may be. And it is nice to see the little boats coming through, but our docking in Sealy's Bay has apparently, I think it's up some 30% for seasonal rates, so that's a positive thing for Sealy's Bay. Staff is busy working on the first newsletter, which will be out this fall, so you can watch for that. So that'll be a nice step forward. And you should have also received the community recreation guide, which has gone out. So that is basically in a nutshell what's been going on. Oh, and the other thing was the BRE. The county put on a meeting for business retention and expansion. It was a data collection and focus-driven exercise, and the CAO and myself, as well as a couple of other local businesses, were asked to attend. This was a county-driven effort, and we will be bringing this information back to the Economic Development Committee for discussion once we have the results from Amber and the county. Do you have anything to add to that?
Just that the information that we receive is being, and the feedback from the mayors is being processed by, and we're being asked to keep that confidential until the final report. At that time, it will go into to copy to council and to the Economic Development Advisory Committee at the same time, so that the committee can present their recommendations to council based on that report.
Lastly, not to end on a sour note, but just to provide some further closure. Today was the sentencing of the former chief, Jordan-Bennett, for the town of Gananoque and the township of Lees and the Thousand Islands. He was sentenced to 9 months in jail, 1 year probation, and for further counseling and rehabilitation, and then 10 years prohibitive. He cannot be part of any volunteer group or hold any sort of position where he has authority over assets, whether it be monetary or physical assets. I was quoted in the paper today in regards to being disappointed with the number of municipal employees that were there to support the chief, and I'll stand by that comment all day long. Because it's not fair to the employees that work here and who are honest and considerate and aware that they're in a position of trust. So when I make the comment that I'm disappointed that other fire chiefs from other jurisdictions came to support the fire chief, I'm not saying they're doing anything dishonest, but what is it that they hold from a values and moral standard? And that's what my concern is. Because the municipal employees that we do trust on a regular basis to do their best and to do it honestly, we rely on your information here at this council table. So I am glad to have this chapter closed, and hopefully the chief and the rest of the fire service can move forward. I know that we have some new recruits coming on, and it is my hope that we will continue to build on the team that we have and the people, men and women who stand up and who were unfortunately needed a lot this weekend. I know that we also had to call in some extra help from Reno Lakes at the time, but at the end of the day, we have each other's backs, and that's what being part of this team is about. So, and that's all that I have for this evening. Any other final comments before I close the meeting? Councilor Brown.
To you, Your Worship, the DRAO program, we've been talking about IJC and the political theater that's going to cause. Has the DRAO program been opened? Has there been further discussion on that?
Thank you for bringing that forward. We actually had a connection with Kevin Fitzhugh, our contact at Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. He is supposed to, I believe next week, we're supposed to go out on tour to look at specific instances where flooding has caused great damage. I'm very relieved that we had over 80 submissions so far from residents who have damage. Whether they are year-round or seasonal is irrelevant to me, because there's lots of people who are year-round who haven't submitted submissions for one reason or another, sometimes because they're afraid that that information will get disseminated down to other people, but it is for our use only. But the main theme that we're trying to drive home here is that if we can show more data, more instances of damage and the cost associated with repairing it, the better chance we have in enacting DRAO. So the good news is that it's not on a time limit. We have the ability to enact it as long as we can show the reasoning behind it. And as you well know, the water levels really haven't come down quite far enough to see the extent of some of the damage. We have seen water levels drop. It still is considered very high water for this time of year. At this point in time, usually there's parts of the river you just know you can't go to because the water levels have dropped so much, but unfortunately we're not there yet. So the next 90 to 120 days is critical to continue to have maximum outflows so that the glass will be reduced enough so that we can receive more water into the glass next year. So that's the simplest way to explain it. And my hope is that the IJC will heed the warning, but it is incumbent upon us as mayors and councillors and municipalities to continue banging that drum so that they understand that the hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure and personal property at risk is just as important as fish and fauna and shoreline. So thank you for bringing that up. So we will report back as soon as we have any recommendations from the ministry and Kent, Mr. Fitzhugh. Any further discussions or comments to be made prior to closing the meeting? Moved by Councilor Foley, seconded by Councilor Jameson, that committee level will adjourn. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, carried. Thank you, everyone.